Hello, my name is Brennan Sting, and this is my demo video 1 for submission 2 of CS485 Advanced Game Development. And here is the halfway prototype for Asteroid Belt. So basically, this is where we're at currently in the development process. Let me just expand the scene view here right now. Currently, I just made recent additions to the environment, as well as some playable space configurations, and some placeholder UI. But for the most part, development has been focused on the player ship and player input, and all that, and that whole control system. So here, just taking a look at the scene view, static environment objects have been placed, such as planets, satellites, and some space stations. These planets are actually outlined out or just Fresneled, because currently they are actually shaders. So when and I can demo this part real quick. The cool thing about using ERP with my environment objects is that I can apply certain shaders to them to only be rendered at runtime, and in certain directions. So you can see we're saving some lighting by only facing lighting towards the player object or player position. So you see the green planet, back of it is just completely Fresneled, no really computation going on in the back there, but the part where it counts in the front towards the player is actually lit. And you may be wondering why we just don't do an unlit and just have everything, the whole planet, just a texture. It's because with doing this way, you get that cool little shadow outline. You can see around the left side of the planet, you get that shadow effect. So really makes the planet pop realistically. So let me exit back out of the game because we're just going over environment right now. And then in addition, you'll see that we have, your eye might be drawn to the whole entire gizmos or the wire spheres and such. So the green area and the green sphere and wire sphere are basically the field of view gizmos that allow me as a developer to see how far the player's camera can render in any given direction at any point. So this is kind of a radius of field of view that they can render at, because there will be culling masks eventually if you go back far enough. And I might reduce the culling size. It's currently set to 2,500 for far clipping plane, which that is a little high, but it's not obsessively high that it hits performance really hard. Going above 3,000 is not recommended, but it was at default 1,000, so I might shorten it down to 2,000 instead of 2,500. But so far, performance-wise on my end, hasn't really affected my builds. And then in addition to that, we have the yellow wire sphere, right? So the yellow wire sphere is actually the playable area, which is the treadmill. So the player treadmill, essentially when the player leaves this yellow wire sphere, they'll get teleported back into the playable space. And now there is a system you can set, right? If you go into managers and go into level manager, you can essentially adjust the yellow sphere with the sphere radius, determining how far the playable area is. But I'm going to keep it at its 2,000, which is a nice, decent play space. In addition to that, there's also the teleport events. So on player teleport ready, it's when they exit the yellow zone and the timer starts counting down to warp them back. On player teleport is when they get warped back in that moment. And then on player out of teleport, that's the timer after they've teleported, which we have the sequence time for that set to 1 second. So this can be shortened because hyperspeed can make the player go really fast momentum-wise, and momentum is currently preserved. So if you go outside the wire sphere at really high speeds, you could potentially clash into some static objects. Or you can also reduce the speed or half the time of hyperspeed, but it's just overall the whole system needs tweaking from a design standpoint. But all the functionality is supported with the current treadmill teleportation system. And these teleportation systems are actually implemented using a coroutine. I can show that real quick in the script. I'm not sure if ClipChamp or whatnot will show this, but if it doesn't, I'll just read it out. because I'm currently just having my screen recording show my Unity window. So we'll see if the IDE for opening up the script is part of Unity or not. So basically, the coroutine that this power off of is called entry teleport effects routine, and then we have an exit teleport effects routine. So we actually have two coroutines declared in level manager C# script. And what those do, let me just find them right now. So they're both declared using the IE enumerator interface. They'll have Boolean flags for warping. Is it ready to warp? Can they exit? And those will be set from false to true after the wait for seconds is done. So all the cooldown mechanics for these teleports are done using a yield return statement with wait for seconds. And then the parameters that we see here over in the Unity window, the teleport delay time, sickness time, is just passed in as a private field into the coroutines for how long they should wait. So that's really all that's going on there in the back end. In addition to that, we also have in the level manager the planets, and this planets list is what goes through and applies the dynamic lighting shader to it, and that's just an HLSL shader. So a lot going on, but I'm just trying to breeze by through this in this demo to keep it relatively short, so the file size doesn't get too big. Here we have all the static environment stuff, so satellites, transmitter, space station, the planets, and then you'll notice that the skybox actually isn't rendered in the editor, but it's actually rendered during runtime. And this is because of one of the cool functionalities of URP. Let me just find the camera. So what we have here in the main camera, which is kind of the Cinemachine brain that can bridges the two virtual cameras I have, and we'll get to that in a second, is that basically there's a skybox handler script which has a list of skyboxes, and basically the skybox component here, the custom skybox, will run or select one of these skybox materials to use at runtime and then apply it to the active Cinemachine camera. So pretty cool URP on the fly stuff right there. And then here's the toggle Asteroids cam, which toggles between the first person and third person camera. And I'll show that right now in a little demo. And then at the end, I'll show you the final build of what this all looks like when it comes together in its current piece. So we have basically, here's the first person camera from the side of the ship. And then if I press Q, which is set to my toggle button, I will now go into Asteroids mode. And so you can see that the top-down camera has its own shader. It's a full screen shader, so it's much more efficient than applying a shader to everything in the scene individually. And then if I toggle back, it will disable that effect and go back to my first person. And Cinemachine offers a nice, smooth top-down to first person and vice versa transition for both those virtual cameras. So if you're wondering where those are located on the player's ship as a child, so their follow position is much more consistent. And we have the 3D camera, which is the first person or cockpit camera. That is set to a tag to check script-wise. And then we have the follow camera, which is the third person camera. And I labeled it 2D. It is really 3D, but it's 2D because it's top down and just following the player in a very strict and constrained way. So that it looks more flat rather than this perspective first person camera. It's more orthographic. But yeah, and then additionally, we have this chromatic aberration stuff, which is actually used with the player abilities. And here's the player input system asset that I have. And we have an aircraft hyperspeed, which is using left shift. And that is a ability that recently just got added. And it's been refined for a little bit, but its overall parameters or fields just have to be adjusted to fit the game scope in the end. But its ability is in the game. So basically what happens if I press shift, this chromatic aberration will separate out the RGB channels, and I have a Perlin noise effector on my camera. What will that do? Well, it creates a nice little hyperspeed speed effect. Watch. So see all the post-processing, you can see the RGB channels splitting, and my camera also shakes. But then once it goes out of the coroutine of hyperspeed, it disables those post-processing effects and goes back to normal. And performance is still really good, and momentum is preserved. And then as I'm going through here, I'll just show you the teleport treadmill. If I can just get my my guy to go in the direction I want him to go. Let me just see where he's at right now. Let me restart the game. We'll just go forward. This game can be a little disorientating, but the freedom is all there. You really feel like you're in an open world, just because of the span of it. So achieving that effect is perfect, right where I want it right now. So there's our ship. A little blue line down there is our ship, and we're just gonna go right here. And then you can see him approaching the yellow border. And then once he does, he goes past that threshold. Console print started teleport treadmill routine, and then exit, and then we're back. And yeah, so the center position might have to be refined a little bit because you can see we do get teleported at a little bit of offset. But again, these are all really rough stage mechanics, but the teleportation does work. It does keep them in the playable area. And it used to be where it would toggle it to where it'd be at the essentially it'll teleport them to the opposite edge. But I found out that if that was done, they could just go to the nearby teleport boundary right adjacent to them, and then they could do a back-to-back teleport, and that can be really disorienting. So setting them back to somewhat in the center is a much better feel. So, yep. Yeah. So that is currently the game for the most part. The UI is not functional, but it is in. That'll be the last part, the last talking point. Well, actually, I do have the Asteroids to demo too. So this is the UI. It's mostly static just for right now, just a canvas, but it does have some little cool formatting to it. So it has a panel for the upper right health bar and score text, and then the HP bar is actually just a horizontal layout group that offers better control over the heart icons and keeping them evenly spaced. And then the text is just basically doing the bros text. Couldn't find the Emery font for open source, but again, it's a very nice space text. So we rock with it. And the last thing is just the asteroids. So the asteroids actually have some breakable functionality to them. I don't know if I already showcased them, but I'll showcase them in the demo as well. But let's just do it here too. So they each have a fracture script, and they each have an asteroid script. And with the asteroid script, basically it stores a reference to the fractured asteroid to spawn and then the explosion to spawn in place as well as it is exploding. And the fracture script and essentially allows it to basically fracture or destroy. So we got some destroy functionality here. It's not using destroy media because we're going to try to be relatively easy on Unity's garbage collection. So. And each one of the asteroids has the same scripts and no gravity rigid bodies on them, so they can be collided with the bullets or blasters projectiles that are in the game. And here's basically the asteroid fracture prefabs. And all they are is just a root parent object with a fractured asteroid script to destroy immediately after the explosion goes off, and then this will generate a bunch of bits because there are a bunch of child bit objects on them. So we'll just showcase that real quick. Here we go. So if I shoot at this guy, boom, you can see the bits going off. Sorry, phone call. And then we'll shoot at this guy, boom, and you can see the explosion is smaller because there's different explosions or presets from the asset that I got on the Indie Asset Store. And it is just it's a deprecated asset, so I had to go down GitHub to get it. But it offers these cool dynamic explosions that I can rig up and hook up to these breakable asteroids asset I got. So then this guy is really cool. He has a multicolor to him, so you can see it does like a magenta, cyan, and a green. And all their chunks just scatter in low gravity and then drift away. So really cool stuff. Really cool stuff. So that's the current state of the game. The only other really impressive environmental feature to showcase, I guess, besides what already has been covered, is you'll notice that there's some stardust that floats around my ship. If you can see here, there's some stardust. It's not part of the skybox. It's actually just a particle dome on the player ship. So if I go to here, and my ship's going to spin because I'm currently looking in the inspector. But space dust You can see that it's basically just a giant particle dome that generates some space dust, and its timing duration allows it to spawn as I'm traversing, so I'm going through the dust. And so that's really cool. But yeah, other than that, this has been my demo for submission 2. And I will now transition over to the build, and you can see the final result. Enjoy.